You know what's funny? When I tell people about debt payoff strategies and how they can go from $0 to over 5,100 without making more money in certain scenarios, I think they think it's a joke, right? And what probably happens is that they just kind of stumble onto these videos and then they just watch and then they just get mesmerized, but they don't know what to think or say. And the reason that I think this is because when I look at my YouTube analytics and this video is very similar to the video I posted yesterday. I only have 108 views and I have 13.2 watch hours and I just do Excel spreadsheets all day. I don't think anything special, but I think when people see it, they feel a lot of emotions and then they don't know what to think. Or it's maybe too shocking or painful. In fact, I asked a question yesterday. Serious question. How did you feel after understanding how easy debt payoff is? And then someone actually answered, I feel like I'd missed out on a huge portion of my life because I was stressed out about debt and I didn't need to be. Right? Isn't that it's kind of heartbreaking, right? But you know what? I want to make sure that you're well equipped. Hopefully you're not heartbroken, well equipped to handle debt. And what we're going to do is learn something called a velocity method. And so you'll be able to see how you can potentially go from 0 to 5,000 without making more money. And you see the income is the same. And so we have to learn the fundamentals of this strategy. And so basically, what is the difference between average American banking and the velocity method? Well, I'll show you what the difference is. Difference number one is that the way that you treat your checking account. So with the average American style of banking, you treat your checking account as the final destination of your money. Whereas here with the velocity method, we're deliberately putting our checking and savings into zero. And so we're treating our checking and savings as the intermediary of our so called banking workflow, right? And the final destination of our money is something called a line of credit. And by the way, if you don't know what a line of credit is, all it is a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over again. Right? So there's personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, business lines of credit. A credit card is technically a line of credit, but it's a little bit inflexible and it has very high interest rates, right? You can't use a credit card to pay a student loan. That's a little bit difficult. Okay? You having a credit card and then using it to pay a student loan. Yes, you can do it with plastique.com. I'm aware of that, right? Plastique.com. But then that has its own sets of restrictions, right? So it's not so easy, but that's technically a line of credit. Now, how do we get a line of credit? So let's say we have zero, our income, and actually let me do this, right? Our income is the same as our expenses, and we have $0 left over, right? And then we have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 credit cards, two auto loans, a student loan, and a mortgage. And look at this student loan, we're probably a doctor. But because we have so much debt, we live a little bit modestly, only $2,000 a month in personal expenses. All the expenses not tied to debt. Even if we're debt free, we still got to pay for them: food, gas, insurance, and all that other good stuff. Okay. Now, what we're going to show is when we go from this style of banking to this style, okay, we call it the velocity method. We used to call it velocity banking, but the state of Illinois does not like that because the state of Illinois says you're not a bank, and if you run a business and use the word banking, then that's not allowed. Luckily, I'm just a content creator. I just demonstrate. I don't take anybody's money, or at least I don't think I do. Well, at least I think I do. 99-cent YouTube channel memberships. So the reason I'm going to talk about the YouTube channel memberships is because if you ever want to see scenarios where people have 10, 20 debts, and they're actually real life scenarios with maxed out everything, join the YouTube channel membership. See, in this video, I like to make things simple. I make some unrealistic assumptions, and one of the first unrealistic assumptions that I make is that you'll somehow be able to get a free and clear line of credit with this demonstration, right? And why is it not realistic? Okay, let's think about this. Why is it not realistic? It's because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? Banks don't lend money to people who need it. So if the bank sees that you need money, they will never lend you anything, right? And you know from your own personal experience that whenever someone asks to borrow money from you because they quote needed it, okay, they quote needed the money, right? They never paid you back. The bank knows this too because they do a gajillion transactions and they have all the data in the world to figure out who they should lend to. And you know who they don't lend to? Money to people who need it, right? Or who don't need it. They don't lend money to people who need it, right? And so we're going to make an unrealistic assumption here. And the reason why we make this unrealistic assumption that we might have, let's say, a free and clear $200,000 8% line of credit is that it makes the demonstration so much easier. And you can see the value of having that line of credit when you're broke. But you got to do things in the right order, folks. Order of operations, okay? And plus, if you want to see a real life scenario, join the 99 cent YouTube channel membership. Okay, so now let me put a zero right here. So as I said before, we're going to make sure that the checking and savings is deliberately zero. So it's all in the mindset at this stage. And then what we're going to do is focus on this number called cash flow and increase that cash flow by moving some debts into the line of credit. So right now we have $164,000 of line of credit, right? 164, okay? And what I want to do is show you how we rank the orders of the debt, right? Well, how do we know which debts to pay off? Because some people might focus on the mortgage first because the mortgage is tied to something emotional. It's tied to your home, right? It's tied to survival. But mathematically, the mortgage is the last debt that we should pay off, right? And so we're going to use something called the cash flow index to determine which debts to pay off. And what is the formula for the cash flow index? It's simply just the current debt balance divided by the monthly payment. And then it gives you this number. This number is like a ranking system, and the lower the number, that's the debts you want to pay off first, and the higher the number, that's the debts you want to pay off last, right? So let's take a look at the 30-year mortgage. Why do we pay off the 30-year mortgage last? Well, it's $320,000 of debt that we have to pay to only get $1,500 of cash flow back. Whereas if we focus on, let's say, these credit cards, I'll focus on this credit card and this credit card, that's $65,000 of credit card debt. Okay, $65,000 of credit card debt, and that's $2,000 of cash flow for just for 65,000. Whereas we don't even get $2,000 for 320,000. So we have to think about bang for our buck when it comes to debt payoff and cash flow. Okay, and I did not start using the cash flow index seriously until random people started sending me an email their debt spreadsheets. There's like, I have 10 debts. I was like, that is so overwhelming. How do I figure this out? It's like, oh, cash flow index. Then now I can just rank the debts and know which ones to figure out which to pay. And it was beautiful. That's why I'm a big fan of it, just because it simplifies. And I really love anything that simplifies whatever you have to do, right? So so what we're gonna do is take these low ranking numbers, which are the credit card debts, right? So credit cards 1 to 10, move them into the line of credit. That's 164,000, and let's just do this, okay? 164,000, and then guess what happens when we move the credit card debt into the line of credit? Okay, this is gonna blow you away. 000. Let me put more zeros here, and then now look at this. We went from zero checking and savings to over $5,000 without making more money. How do we do that? OMG! How do we do that without making more money? Because you see, the income is the same. We were a broke doctor just like 5 seconds ago, and now we have over $5,000 of cash flow, right? So now the final step is we put our entire paycheck, this 11,000, into the line of credit. Take the $6,000 out to pay for these other expenses that are not zero, right? The two auto loans, the student loan mortgage, and the $2,000 of expenses. And then we just rinse and repeat over and over again. And after every single month, the balance of our debt should go down by 5,000. And to see how that's demonstrated, it's really easy. We take the previous month's balance, previous month's interest, minus the cash flow, which is 5160.71. And then what we do is to calculate the interest is based on the average daily balance, right, times 0.08, and then you divide by 12. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we see every single month the balance goes down about $5,000 and some change. And then we also see that in what month is it? 36, it gets paid off, right? Month 36, it gets paid off. And so all we gotta do is right here, so month 36. How much debt was that? It's 164K. 164,000. Simple, right? What's our time right now? Just want to see how long it took. So 10 minutes just to go from 0 to over 5,000. Wow, that was easy. Okay, let's see if how fast I can do this. Probably in 10 more minutes. All right, so now we have the two auto loans, a student loan and mortgage, and then luckily we got this loan calculator right here, where all I got to do is just put the current month, which is 36, right? Oopsie, I put 46. It'll give us the current balances and the current cash flow indexes, and we just follow the system, right? So notice that we don't attack the 7% debt. We attack the 3 to 4% debt first because for this amount of debt, we get relatively more cash flow, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Get the cash flow. So that's 17 grand, the two debts, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and copy and paste. So that's going to be plus 17679.31. And then guess what happens to the auto loan, right? 0, 0, bam, bam. Okay. And now it's almost $6,000 of cash flow. $6,000. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and do this. And I'm going to do 5924.35. And now we see that in 2 months we paid off the two auto debts. Okay. So 39 months. 39 months. So month 39. Okay. And this is going to be 164 plus 22 plus 20. So 206. And then now we have the student loan and the mortgage. So I would say at this time, if we want to live a little and increase our personal expenses, that's not a big deal. But if we're living like a monk doctor, I would say it's okay. You know, if you could live on 2,000 and you just focus on debt payoff. But let's see in month 39 what the current balance of the debts are. So we have two debts. One is a student loan. One is the mortgage. So according to cash flow index, we should definitely pay off the mortgage first, right? And one thing we have to be careful about, and I always warn you about this, is that you don't want to move every single loan into a line of credit, even if you could. So what happens is I've seen on the internet where people promote like first lien HELOCs and just say, "Oh, replace your mortgage with the HELOC," right? And then I've done the math, and the math is so bad, right? Like you could be paying 50 times more interest than you have to. Okay. Now, if you use a higher interest rate line of credit to pay off a loan, you might be paying slightly more interest. Okay. I've even done this with 15, 30% credit cards to kind of show what the differences would be, but it's nothing extreme compared to a first lien HELOC. And a lot of people don't understand this. You might be thinking, well, why is that? Well, it's because if I put this $300,000 balance from, let's say, 4% to 8%, I only get this itty bitty amount of cash flow, right? So that's why in the instances of these cars where, hey, they were lower interest rates, but we just moved to the line of credit and got rid of it in 2 months, is because we got a significant amount of cash flow. We paid them off in the right order. But when we do this with our 30-year mortgage, we barely get any cash flow, right? So we probably end up paying more interest than we have to. Okay. Now, if the interest rate is similar, it's kind of iffy, but you'll still end up paying a little bit more. But something that's resistant to the interest rate is something called chunking or incremental payoff, or maybe I need to call it the sweep, right? So basically what you're doing is you're moving a piece of the loan into the line of credit and then paying it off over and over again, right? And there's a reason why we do this is because the default option of overpaying your loan just leads to mental fatigue and no one ever ends up doing it, right? I mean, think about the people that you know in their life who knows that they can pay extra into a student loan or a mortgage, and look at every TikTok video out there where everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, this was such hard work and sacrifice to overpay my loan," right? So this is why we use a line of credit to help pay our loan, but in increments, and then use it as a bridge to overpay our loan. right? So a lot of people might think, what's the difference? Well, the difference is that you don't have that decision fatigue when it comes to extra payments because your mindset is just that the checking account's got to go to zero, the line of credit's got to go to zero, and you don't have to think. See how easy that is? And let me tell you something. This is true when it comes to diets, debt payoff. The more you have to think, the more harder everything gets. This is why I simply just don't I don't think extra payments is the best idea, even though it will work. Right? I have nothing against extra payments. I'm just saying, hey, no, like if I recommend extra payments, I'm going to recommend like something no one's really going to do. Right? That's really what it is. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and do this chunking thing or the sweep with the student loan first. And all I got to do is just put the information or the deets in the income and the expenses. So let me just kind of go here and then let me go and see. So it's $200,000. So this is the so-called feared medical school loan that every doctor fears, but I don't think it's that big of a deal according to these spreadsheets. But let's just go ahead and do this. Right, so 149, and then this is going to be the payment, right? Okay, and then so that's going to be 10 years because that's how much a loan usually is. And then our income, that's really easy. So that's going to be 11,774.25. So that's a nice doctor, right? 11,774.25. And then our expenses, everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. So we're trying to pay off this loan. So this would be these two here, 3527.73. So 3527.73. Okay, so what we're going to do is just do incremental payoff in, let's say, $12,000 chunks. Okay, and we're going to use an 8% line of credit. And then you see here, it gets paid off in 1.6 years, right? Now let's use a 15% line of credit. You notice that the interest doubles, like not doubles, it goes down, goes up by $1,000. Okay, so obviously interest rates do make a difference. If people say it doesn't, that's basically what I'm trying to achieve, which is cult level territory, cult leader territory, where I tell you the interest rate doesn't matter. But anyways, okay, so now this is 1.6 years, and so this is 0, and then this is going to be 39 divided by 12 plus 1.6, and then it's 4 point, no, see, let me just do this. I got to do it in months. So 39 plus 1.6 times 12, right? And let me go ahead and put an equal sign there. And that's 50, we'll say 59 months, month 59. And then that would be 406K, right? 406K. And then the mortgage is 59 months. So let me just kind of do this right here. So this is going to be 0, and then this is going to be 59. And then we just do the same thing now with the 30-year mortgage, right? So now all I got to do is just fill in the details again. Okay. So this is going to be 30 years. Payment amount is 1527.73. So 1527.73. Okay. And then what is our expenses? It's just $2,000 a month, but we could probably greatly increase the expenses, just live a little because we paid off all of our debts, our mortgage. But assuming that we have same income, same expenses, let's just do this. So it's going to be 4%. Hold on. Whoopsie. Can I not copy this? Let me try again. There we go. And I believe the original balance is 320,000. So 320000, and then whoa, mortgage paid off under 2.7 years. Look how casually I say that. Just paid off my mortgage in 2.7 years. So a month, so 59 divided by 12 plus 2.7, that's 7.62 years, and we are debt free, right? Debt free with $726,000 of debt. 726,000. right? So this is going to be zero now. And what is the likelihood that a doctor will do this? Well, this is what I heard is that because they live in the struggle bus for so long in their residency and undergrad years, they kind of go crazy, and maybe they just do a one-time splurge with like 10 credit cards, two auto loans, buy a house, and now they're ready to sacrifice again. It might be possible. 7.62 years debt free, but heck, if they didn't go crazy with these 10 credit cards, then they probably would have been in a much better position to pay off their house. Probably less than 3 years, right? Okay, well that's it for today, folks. This is Korean Lanta Mentorship here with another video. What do you think? You think you know a lot of people are shocked by watching these videos and they just don't know what to say and that's why they're silent? Yeah, I don't think they've commented on the video. Yeah, no comment. Okay, well, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day and leave a comment.